Good evening. I'd like to call to order the planning board meeting of August 29th, 2017 to order. The first item on our agenda tonight is the minutes from August 15th. Mr. Secretary. Mr. Clerk, sorry, do you have minutes?
I recommend approval of the minutes of August 15th as corrected.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next is public comment. If anyone's here to talk about an item that is not on our agenda tonight, we welcome you to come up and speak. Seeing none, we'll move along. The next item is the release of covenants, CLVS Associates Limited Partnership, Moraine Ridge Road.
Mr. Chairman, that's the covenant that the board required as part of its subdivision approval so many years ago for the common driveway. The board may remember that you recently modified that subdivision to eliminate that condition. And this would be, the 20-day appeal period has gone by, the plan can be recorded, and this release of covenant is necessary to free the condition.
So I move that we vote to release the covenant of CLVS Associates Limited Partnership, Moraine Ridge Road.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? All set? Thank you. The next item on the agenda, approval not required plans received between August 16th and August 29th. The applicant, James and Shelley Hawking, to divide one lot into two lots at 57 and 65 Currier Road. Has everyone here had a chance to review the plan?
Yes.
So I move that we endorse the plan as pictured.
We have a motion to endorse. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. A question?
I have a question. On the plan, is it lot 1A and 1B? Mm-hmm. Is that what's being requested?
Yes.
Yeah.
So lot B doesn't have frontage on Currier Road. So what does it have frontage on? Is it McCarthy Lane?
Yes.
And does it matter that McCarthy Lane is a private way and not a public way?
Not that I know of.
No, it's a subdivision control road, so it qualifies.
So it's approved subdivision control. What is the answer?
So whether it's private or not doesn't matter? Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? All set. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Planning board discussion. Recommendation zoning article, November 2017 town meeting, marijuana retail establishments. Have you all had a chance to, well, I'm sure we have, because we've been through this a couple of times.
So the board had its hearing a few weeks ago, as you may recall. And this is a result of question 2 of the May ballot.
Do you want it read, Brian, so that everybody can hear what it is?
No, the hearings are
Since
over.
we've already
The hearing's
heard,
over, yeah, the public comment, this
No,
is,
I know
this
that.
is just between
No,
us.
I realize that.
Okay.
We've got a lot of people here, so I
Yep.
wondered. Okay, so I move that we recommend this to the spring town meeting warrant as printed here.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Moving right along. applicant, Joseph Bashino, to modify a definitive plan to reduce 3 existing lots and roadway, hike and way, into 1 lot, Cape and Islands Engineering. So we've had a hearing on this, site plan, site visit.
So this is the definitive plan, this is not the special permit?
Right, the special permit's coming later. Correct. So we're modifying this definitive plan. Sometime a few years ago, we divided it up, and now we're putting it back together again at the applicant's choice. Any need for any questions from anybody? We all set?
Well, let's get a motion on the table, okay? So I move that the planning board vote to approve the application of Joseph Bucciano under Article 4, Definitive Plans, Chapter 305, Subdivision Regulations of the Town of Falmouth, for approval of a modification to the planning board's decision dated August 16, 2005, approving a plan entitled, in quotes, Definitive Subdivision of Land, formerly Hike and Way, in East Falmouth, Massachusetts, end quote. One sheet, prepared by Cape and Islands Engineering, dated May 10, 2017, scale 1 inch equals 40 feet, with the following findings and conditions. Findings. This application seeks to modify the planning board's decision of August 16, 2005, copy enclosed, and recorded in the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds in Plan Book 603, page 49, and merge the parcels known as Lots 3A, 4, and 5 on Hike and Way in East Falmouth. The applicant is seeking the approval of a special permit for a contractor's yard from the planning board, the purpose for merging the 3 lots and layout of Hike and Way. The planning board finds the modification to the definitive plan decision dated August 16, 2005, to merge the originally proposed 3 lots to 1 acceptable. Waivers. No waivers from the planning board rules and regulations are hereby granted. Conditions. 1. Prior to definitive plan modification endorsement, the applicant shall submit an electronic copy of the above referenced plan as a portable document file, PDF, format. 2. Previously approved and executed agreement for a utility easement across the proposed layout of Hike and Way may remain in place. Is there a second?
Do I have a second? That was the motion. Looking for a second.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions?
I have a question.
Yes, John?
Does the applicant own this property? And if he does not own the property, what right does he have to take the 3 lots and merge them into 1?
I believe if you have a purchase and sale agreement, you also have the right for this.
The owner signed the application.
The owners
Okay.
also applied, so.
Thank you.
A good question.
I have a
Yes.
question also. This division into 3 lots out of the 1 has been in place since 2005, is that right? And I'm wondering what bearing on the question the expectation of the neighbors might be, considering they probably knew that, and it created in their mind an expectation of a residential development being there at the time they were making their decisions in the neighborhood.
Who's that question for?
For us to discuss. Or
Again, the-
It doesn't matter if it was 30 years later, they still have the right to do it.
you know,
is it by right?
No, it's a definitive plan. You have to come to this board and ask.
So it's not by right.
They have the right
so-
to ask.
Right. So I'm wondering, among us, if we think that the neighbors' expectations of a residential development affect our decision.
For me, it's agriculturally zoned. That's, John?
I would ask a competing question. If the applicant is successful in making this 1 lot instead of 3, and then the applicant comes back in front of us for, or has come in front of us for, a special permit, and the special permit is denied, then the neighbors not only have 1 house lot in their neighborhood instead of 3. So it could work either way. If the special permit is denied, then, and we've already changed this into 1 lot, it's only 1 lot instead of 3. And maybe the neighbors have gained something by that.
Brian?
Again, your decision under subdivision control, you're not in zoning world,
Right.
you're in subdivision
Sure.
world.
Right. So we're not thinking about 240, 216.
You're not
Can
thinking
neighborhood
about-
character, all those things don't apply.
Correct. So what you're doing is you're essentially putting in reverse. Remember, Massachusetts has some of the oldest and archaic land use laws in the nation. And so what you're doing is simply putting the subdivision control process in reverse. It's totally the applicant's choice. The board has very little discretion. If it comports with your reasonable rules and regulations, you must, the board members who have had subdivision control law tutorials, you know, the board has to approve the plan, but it doesn't have any bearing on, you know, neighborhood zoning issues. It's all subdivision control.
Thank you.
Yes, Pat?
There's something about the findings that gives me pause on this, and that is that, okay, we just don't have a problem with people combining lots to making a larger lot, or when possible, doing an A&R to split lots apart. But my problem with this is the statement that says the applicant is seeking the approval of a special permit for a contractor's yard from the planning board, the purpose for merging the 3 lots and layout of Hike and Way. By putting that into the findings, it could be construed, well, then we agree with that usage by making this vote. And that I find a little disturbing, the implication that we find it as acceptable, because we may or may not. And so I just as soon strike it from the findings.
Make a motion.
So therefore, I move that we strike that statement from the findings.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion?
Seeking
I agree.
Okay.
You're talking about striking the entire sentence or just a
Yes,
phrase?
striking that entire sentence.
Which it is,
It
Which
starts,
condition?
the applicant is seeking the approval of a special permit for a contractor's yard from the planning board. The purpose for merging the 3 lots and layout of Hike and Way. By virtue of the fact that that's stated in there, if we voted positively on merging the 3 lots, that statement in there says, well, then, we must therefore approve of why this is being done. So
It's a leading statement.
yes, I find that objectionable to be in this vote.
Good catch, Pat.
okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further comments on this modification? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No one. Okay. Thank you, Pat. We missed that.
Not a real motion.
Okay, now motion on the main, vote on the main. We have a motion and a second on the main motion as well, correct? So I'm looking for a vote. All in favor of the main motion as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No one? Okay, thank you. On to the next. Public discussion, applicant Michael J. Conley, site plan review to construct an accessory apartment within the single-family dwelling to be constructed at 87 Gunning Point Way. And this is our first one under our new bylaw. So for the,
Notices.
what?
Notices.
Oh, notices. Sorry. Thank you, Paul.
The notice of public hearing was published on August 11, 2017. In addition, 19 abutters were notified by regular mail. Thank you.
For the applicant,
Good evening, Mr. Fox, members of the board. I'm Bob Ament. I'm a local attorney.
I don't think the microphones are on, we can't hear that.
well, the microphone there is only for people at home.
Even your microphones. we
They're
can't
only
hear
for
anything there.
people at home, so we'll ask everyone to speak up so you can hear. But these are for the television camera,
Thank you.
not for the room. We don't have a PA system.
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
don't need one.
I often don't speak loudly enough, and I'll try to, so let me know if I need to elevate more. As I said, I'm Bob Ament. I represent the applicants. The applicants are Michael Connolly and Linda Connolly. They are in the back of the room, and able to answer any questions if you have any. And yes, we are making history tonight, not that important history perhaps, but this is the first review by the planning board under the accessory apartment bylaw that was adopted by town meeting in April. And that bylaw says that for accessory apartments within a single-family dwelling, then the planning board will review the plan pursuant to site plan review. And if it was an apartment in a detached building, then the Board of Appeals issues a special permit, a separate proceeding. What's interesting about that bylaw passed by town meeting this year is that this is the only occasion in which the planning board will have site plan review for a single-family home, because the bylaw for site plan review provides that it does not apply to single-family or two-family residences. It applies for commercial projects or multifamily dwellings, and when there's 1,000 or more square feet being added for commercial purposes and 5 or more parking spaces. So this, however, is a single-family home with a accessory apartment in a 2 dwelling units in the proposed structure. The Connollys own both the lot on the corner of Gunning Point and Sipwith Road, this southerly corner. They own the house there. They own this more than 2-acre lot next to it. They intend to build a house in this location, shown on the plans that are filed with you. And they'd like to have an accessory apartment in that new house, as the bylaw now allows. The accessory apartment will comply with all of the criteria, number of bedrooms, size, will meet building code requirements, egress, and so on. Your review is not with respect to the use, it's with respect to a site plan review. And the overriding concern, I think, under the bylaw, is that the house that's built, the dwelling with the 2 dwelling units in it, has the appearance of a single-family home, as this house will. You have architectural plans that have been filed. There's only a single front entrance to the house. And it will be an attractive house, again, as shown on the plans. Because of Conservation Commission issues, the house is fairly close to the street, and there's a relatively small area to be landscaped. A landscaping plan itself has not been prepared, but the Conservation Commission has granted a order of conditions and required that any lawn be so-called Falmouth friendly lawn. The topography of the lot is such that the driveway and the lot pitch away from the street, so drainage isn't an issue. There are plenty of dry wells that are planned, and that's been reviewed by the Conservation Commission. On your staff report listed as open issues drainage and septic system and water. I can give you a response to the staff report. I have 3 copies of it. It includes a lot of photos of the property next door owned by the Connollys about the type of landscaping that's going to be done. But let me just run through this. As I said, the Conservation Commission has already approved this project. The Board of Health has approved a denitrification septic system, which is going to be used. And the Public Works Department has approved the proposed driveway, and the Water Department has certified that there's town water. So I think we've actually addressed, if you haven't heard from the Engineering Department, perhaps your referrals have been updated in the last couple of days. But I think that addresses the issues of the septic and the water and the drainage. With regard to the landscaping, Like the property next door, there will be a mix of hydrangea, winterberry, summer sweet, bayberry, rhododendrons, azaleas, knockout roses, and perhaps arborvitae. There are a couple of stone walls that are also shown on the site plan which you've received. So I'm going to give you 3 copies of a memorandum that says what I've just told you, that includes attached a batch of photos of the type of landscaping that's proposed. Now, I don't want to make more of this site plan review for us for a house than necessary, so I'm going to stop, see if you have any questions for me or for the Connollys. Thanks.
Excuse me, Mr. Mint, I have a question. You covered it in general, but could you specifically cover the requirements for the size of the unit, that it fits the limitation, and the percentage of the main dwelling? You said it did, but could you call out the numbers for us?
Okay. I'm going to ask the Connollys to help on this because, frankly, I think that the site plan review would only be for the issues under site plan review, but we'll get those answers for you, and I think we'll have them for you shortly. This is Michael Connolly.
I'm always reminded of the phrase, say nothing and be thought a fool, speak and remove all doubt. And on that particular context, the most significant restraint is that the unit itself, the accessory apartment, cannot exceed 800 square feet. And in this particular case, it's 780 square feet. We do have the plans, and I actually would love to, roll out how the structure looks, because we went to great pains to make certain it fit the character of Gunning Point. But
Well, that was my problem. I couldn't even notice you had an accessory apartment bylaw of the building, so I just went...
it's the 3rd floor.
Okay.
When I say the 3rd floor, it's 2.5 stories, so you have half a floor in effect. And again, the Conservation Commission, given the D-night system in terms of the septic that we're required to have, limits us to 4 bedrooms. So in the first 2 floors, you have 3 bedrooms. You have 1 bedroom in the accessory apartment and 1 bath. And you have a small kitchen area, which is a big plus. And the major factor for us, and I say this, I don't want to offend anybody, but when you're talking about Gunning Point, there is a belief amongst a lot of people in town that if you're out on Gunning Point, you're fabulously wealthy and you can do anything and everything you want. And candidly, we do not fit that bill. And this gives us some significant options with respect to the use of the unit. There's the hard and fast limitation that if you decide to rent the unit, and obviously you'd be talking about either a young couple or an elderly couple or 2 people, that in that particular instance you have to rent for at least a minimum of 7 months. You can't rent, this cannot be a bed and breakfast type operation, and that's not what we want, and that's not what's going to happen. But there's also the other option when we have an extraordinarily big family. We have 4 children, all of whom are married. We have 14 grandchildren, all of whom are under 9 years of age. And in that particular context, sometimes you like to get away from the grandchildren. And this would serve as a very real retreat for that purpose. It also gives you the option of being able to shut down the main house and just right now, we're in a condo in Boston, which we're leaving October 1st. We're going to live here at 91, or making certain that we're there for the construction phase, so that it actually happens with some reality. And then we're going to move into the new house. And, our condo in Boston is only some 1,000 square feet, a little bit more than 1,000 square feet, same setup. We're very happy there, but we're coming and going to be full-time residents here in Falmouth, registered to vote, good citizens. And in that particular context, we can see ourselves living in that third floor if that's the option that we can best exercise.
Thank you. That answers my question. And then some.
A little bit more than one.
But thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just have a quick question.
Sure.
How do you keep track of 14 grandchildren? I can't, I got
What
less
are the
than half.
names?
First of all, you never get all the names right. That's where it all starts. And they do come all at one time.
No, that's fine, that was just,
They
Mr. Ahmed, just a quick question. You said there were 2 units, plus the accessory apartment?
No, no,
Or do you
no, no,
consider
no. When I
units?
say there's 2
Okay,
units,
thank you.
you have your main house on the first 2 floors, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. And then on the third floor accessory apartment, you have that one.
I've seen the plans, they're very well done, but when you said 2 units and then talked to accessory apartment, I thought there was
We got it.
a third. Thank you.
The opportunity didn't exist prior to this April or May at town meeting.
Thank you.
And thank you for your memorandum, I thought that was well written.
Could we do one thing? Could we just show everybody, hold up the actual house so people can see how it was labored to get this thing right? Okay. We're not gonna do that.
Well, we usually require the applicant to bring it so we can show it on the screen, but since you don't have it, I think if you want to hold it up, it looks great. Mr. Ament, do you have a way to hold it up for everybody?
Well, I know that the board has had an opportunity to see.
We've had plenty of time to see it.
That's my main
And
concern.
I can tell you, I can't see any difference between a single-family home when I look at it. And if anyone wants to see it, you can, take a look at it real quick. Looks like a single-family home to me.
Just finish.
Any more questions from the board? Do any of the neighbors have any questions? A motion to close?
It's not a hearing,
Yep.
so you don't need a motion,
So take it under advisement and
and we'll see you next meeting.
next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I have Bob's memo, please. I remember this is memo.
Oh, it went that way.
I just
Okay.
get a copy of that memo, so I can put it in the file.
You passed the memo back, guys.
Okay, we said we'd be there by 7. Brian was right. Next one is applicant Chappie LLC site plan review to renovate the existing building, construct an additional building to the existing building, and construct 1 new building to accommodate 7 residential apartment dwellings and a 9,896 square feet commercial space with associated parking, driveways, sidewalks and drainage and landscaping. Now, I had checked, I was just going to notify everybody that I had a previous relationship with the applicant, but our town lawyer was unavailable. So in order to be very careful, I am going to recuse myself for this meeting only until we get an opinion in the future. But I just, because I've had a previous relationship 3 years ago, normally I shouldn't have to recuse myself, but in my opinion, but because I couldn't get an opinion from town council, I don't want to leave an opportunity for anyone to complain, so I'm leaving the room.
For
Oh,
the
you
applicant.
notices.
Oh, notices, okay. Thanks, Paul.
Madam Chairman, public meeting notice was published on August 11, 2017, and 58 abutters were notified by regular mail.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm Laura Moynihan, a Falmouth attorney representing the applicant Chappie LLC. Chappie LLC is a Massachusetts limited liability company. The principal is Warren Dalton, who's here in the audience, and some of you may know Warren from other projects that he's developed around town in Falmouth, multifamily housing generally. Warren's also developed a very nice project in Katomet at the former Katomet Garden site, which is a mixed-use office project and apartments. So he's been in the community working for a number of years, and I think has done a very nice job on a number of developments. With us is Mike Verselli from Falmouth Engineering, whose firm has been responsible for the engineering and surveying for the project, and Will Saltonstall, his firm is responsible for the architecture. This is a site plan review application under the bylaw. The planning board is also the design review committee, so it'll be a little bit of a different format because our objective tonight will be to present you the site plans, to hopefully receive a favorable approval from you on the site plan review, but also a favorable referral from your committee as the design review committee to the zoning board of appeals. The zoning board of appeals will hold its hearing on September 14th. It will issue or be asked to issue a special permit for the multifamily residential units that are being proposed on the property. So this bylaw, as you know, allows a density of up to 6 units per acre. The project requests 7 residential apartment units, so that requires a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So as part of that process, we'll be giving you more information tonight than you normally would see on site plan review. You'll be getting information about the existing building, the condition of that building, the architectural design for the new buildings and the thought process that went into that, as well as the landscaping. And Mr. Dalton will provide that information to you directly. And Mr. Saltonstall is here as well to answer any questions on architecture or design details. And then Mr. Verselli will present the site plan to you. So with that, we will carry on, I guess, with the project and present that to you. I will point out that this property is located in a Business 3 zoning district. It is off of Dillingham Avenue, as you know. It has a rather famous building on the property known as the Nimrod, which is the former Nimrod restaurant building. That existing building contained and housed the restaurant for a number of years, as well as apartments on the second floor. The assessor's records indicate that there were assessed as having 5 apartments on the second floor of that building from the assessor's records. The interior is not in good condition, and Mr. Dalton will talk about that. So it's possible that there were actually more units there or people living there than the assessor's records indicate. But anyway, that's what we have for a reference point. So the commercial uses that are being proposed for this project are not subject to special permit approval. They're by right uses allowed in the business district. So that's important, I think, to the review. The zoning board will be looking at those uses and how they impact the proposed apartments. But again, this is a Business 3 zoning district. There are numerous by right uses that are permitted in the district: office use, retail use, restaurant use, etc. Okay, so with that, I'd like to present Mr. Dalton and give you an overview on the architecture and the existing building. Thank you.
Hang on a second there. That's the site plan. Madam Chairman?
Yes.
That's the site plan. I have to bring up the architectural.
Okay.
Okay? I'm very trained. The window will be so cut. Or if you scroll, you'll get the front end. Scroll.
Good evening. Warren Dalton, and This has been a long time coming, but I think everybody recognizes this building here, Nimrod Building. We've done extensive work in the building already as far as just seeing what we're dealing with as far as structural and rot repair and foundation and things like that. And so we've explored a lot of opportunities and what we thought this project would be good for, and in my opinion, the mixed-use project we're presenting seems to make the most sense to the town, to myself, to everybody that is concerned. Our goal is to preserve this building as it looks, so when you drive by it's easily recognizable, and using the same colors, same earth tone materials, landscape style, and etc. So what we propose is mixed use, apartments above. There are a couple of first floor apartments shown right here. And then just nice, easy access to town, good project that I think would be a nice fit. As you can see to the right there, you can see an accessory building that we've designed. And we've designed that to look like maybe a building that was there before, a barn, etc. It's mostly first floor on this red part right here. It's 2 apartments above. That's the rear of the building there. So I guess before getting into site review or anything like that, we plan on using architecturally correct windows, roofing, wood siding, preserve the chimney the way that it looks, or I think we're going to have to rebuild it.
Madam Chairman, for the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering. I represent the applicant. We prepared the site plans that we have submitted to you for review. I want to start with this very basic plan just to orient you to the current conditions on the site. This is existing conditions, Dillingham Avenue, the existing building that remains on site, and in a very faint color that you can't see very well on this due to the resolution, is basically all pavement. The old parking lot that served the Nimrod facility has 2 entrances, one here and one here, and the remaining part of the lot is almost virtually completely paved with old pavement. And the concept is to alter all of that site and improve it to conditions as shown on the proposed site plan. The proposed site plan still utilizes 2 driveway entrances. There exist today 2 entrances. This is the location of the current entrance to the front of the Nimrod building. The current configuration is such that it's wider than is typical or recommended under design standards. If it's too wide, it becomes actually more dangerous because it gives too many options and opportunities, and it can cause conflicts for traffic entering and exiting. So this entrance has been narrowed to a 2-lane standard dimension width of 24, and it's designed to round with Cape Cod berm to Dillingham Avenue. And in front of the Nimrod building, there is a reoriented parking layout with parking spaces that would serve this portion of the building. Due to the narrowness of the site for access behind the building, we only have room for one-way traffic on this single lane that will allow vehicles to go behind the building if these parking spaces aren't available and seek a parking space out to the rear of the building. Of course, you could also use the other entrance and access the site and park here or here. There'll be proper signage to notify and alert people that this is one way. There'll be markings on the pavement. I'm going to call it the east side of the site, which is currently all pavement, will house the new building that you saw, and the architecturals in the red color. This building will have a new sidewalk in front of it and typical parking spaces that have been laid out in accordance with the zoning bylaw at 240-109 for dimensional width backing access. This is a two-way back to here. There's additional parking in the back. We've actually improved setback conditions. We're still near to the property line, but not effectively on the edge of the property line as the current pavement is in some locations. The site is designed with drainage and other required utilities. These blue rectangles are the septic systems that will serve the buildings. This septic system will serve the existing building and its accompanying addition. This septic system will serve the new building. They've been designed to conform to Title V in the town of Falmouth health regulations. We have designed the parking lot to have drainage that meets the standards under the subdivision regulations for design storms, and it includes a catch basin to collect runoff that would drain a portion of this lot into a drain located here. There's another drain located here. This will be a lawn area with a very gentle depression that allow the runoff to run into the grass area and into a drain that's subsurface to the lawn. And the same concept exists in the rear to drain the back portion of the lot. We have incorporated into the design a landscape plan that includes lawn areas shown in green and landscape areas shown in a lighter pink color. We've also incorporated trees in accordance with the bylaw, parking site trees. So it's a significant improvement over the current conditions for green space and lawn areas. There was a referral, there were two referrals of note, one from two actual letters from the fire department commenting on the site. We have incorporated the concerns of the fire department, which included a fire hydrant being installed on the site, and our concern over the narrowness of this lane that was, prior to the latest revision, only 10 feet wide. It's now been widened to 14 feet to allow for fire apparatus access to the back of the building. The other referral of note was from the engineering department of the Falmouth Department of Public Works. Engineer Scott Schluter, staff engineer, published a memo with some recommendations and some suggestions dated April 11th. It's a 3-page memorandum. We have revised the plans to incorporate all of the concerns raised in that memo. There were a couple technical matters with the drainage that were corrected. He too had suggested that there would be a difficult turning movement here in the narrowness of this one-way lane, so it's the same comment and has been addressed, the same comment that the fire department had. Other issues of note, we're limited to parking, accessible parking space sizes. Originally, we did not design all of the accessible parking spaces to be there were no van accessible spaces. We've actually modified the layout of the parking so that there's a total of 5 accessible spaces, and they're all van accessible, so that there would be no question. You have the option of a van or a vehicle accessing these spaces. The number of spaces has been designed to accommodate the parking demand. There's a table of parking requirements that's a little bit more legible on the plans you have before you for the two uses, which are office space and retail space, and that tabulation is outlined here. We asked for a reduction in the number of spaces. The bylaw requires us to demonstrate that we could build them if necessary, and then the space reduction is outlined on the plan, and the spaces that would not be constructed are located here. They're dashed, and there's 2 out here. I think that sums up the site in general. I'm here, as well as everyone else, to answer your questions.
That's okay. Just like to, if I may, make a couple of more comments. The existing building, as you know, there's been a lot of publicity about preserving this building. And there was a demolition permit issued to take this building down. So what you see before you is really a project that economically needs to exist to support essentially preserving this building. The existing building is in very poor condition. It would be much cheaper to take it down and rebuild on this bit, and that's the reality of it. The foundation needs major repairs. The framing needs extensive work, new roofing, siding, new windows, new fire protection and sprinkler systems, all new plumbing and electrical. So major costs. The applicant estimates about $2 million to bring this building up to code and to renovate it. So I mention that to you because you do have this historic building, and then you have an additional building in the back. But obviously the economics of it are that it's going to have to be financed to finance the construction, and there has to be a rate of return on the project through rental of apartments and office commercial uses in order to sustain the project and pay off the debt. So that's the reality of the situation. Having said that, it does meet the zoning bylaw as far as lot coverage goes in the business district. We've tried in the design to design the 2 buildings so that they do complement each other, and that there are pedestrian-friendly spaces, bicycle racks provided for these uses. So I mention that because I think it's important for any board's review of this project, and I think you do appreciate that, and other people in the community, particularly people that have been involved with the historical commission and when the demolition permits were applied for, understand that there seems to be a strong will in the community to preserve the Nimrod building, but the economic reality of it is that's going to be a very expensive process. And in order for that to work, this entire project needs to go forward as proposed. Thank you.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. About the apartment, what would the average apartment size be?
I think they're shown around, they differ. They're on the floor plans, so.
Yeah, between 8 and 1,200.
Between 8 and 1,200
Okay, so
square feet.
1 2-bedroom.
There's a mix of some 1s and some 2s.
Okay.
So in the existing Nimrod building with the addition portion in the back, there would be actually 5 apartment units. There would be 2 bedrooms and 3 one-bedrooms.
So
okay?
mixed, that, which is
Yeah.
what I was looking for.
Yeah,
was
and then
the-
in the new building, there would be 2 additional apartment units.
Okay. Are any going to be accessible? If Habitat uses the term visitable, because, you know, we go through gyrations to make sure there's accessible parking. Are any of the apartments going to be visitable or
You
accessible?
want to answer that, Will? I'll let you, Will.
Will Saltonstall Architects. Good evening. To answer your question, the 521 CMR, the building code, allows in a kind of matrix like this that the first floor unit, that one of the 7 units be fully accessible. So it's designed to be in this. So in this part of the building, this is a fully accessible unit.
Okay, thank you. How many commercial units are going to be housed in the commercial space?
Well, there are 4 commercial spaces proposed in the new building, all right, and 3 commercial spaces in the existing building. We have labeled them as office. The applicant doesn't want to be restricted to merely office, but the idea is that the B3 zoning district is rather restrictive. If you have retail, then there's a higher parking requirement. So the goal is to seek out office tenants. That may vary a little bit. There might be some personal or household services in there. But whatever uses occupy those commercial spaces, if it's not office, then it would have to be reviewed most likely by the zoning board and the building commissioner to make sure that the parking calculations still work, which typically has been the town's practice in this kind of project. Rather than restricting the commercial uses, there's some type of condition that if it's anything other than office, it has to be reviewed again, usually administratively, to make sure that the parking requirements work.
Okay, thank you.
Paul?
A couple of minor questions. As Mr. Dalton said, it's been a long time coming. And the question I always had is how much of the Nimrod are you going to be able to keep? And I didn't think you keep much of it, and it's pretty admirable that you're keeping as much of that building as you can. I was quite surprised at that. And looking at the architectural plans, I thought it's a very clever use of that building and the new building. But if I remember correctly, there was an efficiency apartment in that existing building, or the existing building. Is that right? You said there was 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, and so forth. Isn't there an efficiency in there?
There were apartments, or are apartments upstairs in the existing building. They were small units that did actually have tenants in them at the time that the building was foreclosed upon, and those tenants.
What's going in there now? Isn't there one that's an efficiency?
By efficiency, you mean with a kitchen?
Well, there's no bedroom. It's just a
suite.
Did I read that right?
I think, as far as I know, the apartments are on the 2nd floor
Yes,
with their
it is.
own kitchen
This one I think is on the
services.
3rd floor.
And Will can maybe.
They're all one bedrooms.
One-bedroom
Okay.
type apartments, yeah. The property was many years ago permitted for an inn, but that was in the 1970s. But
Well, that's it.
but I guess when you say efficiency, they were self-sustaining type units with cooking facilities.
The other question, Mr. Borselli, the engineering department said that it was satisfied with the drainage. Are you saying all drainage is going to be contained on site?
Yes, all drainage will be contained on site. We took steps to regrade. The new pavement will pitch to a drain here, and there's a high point here, so the town road stays on its own on the road, and the site stays on the site. This is all intercepted and pitched to go to this low point, and this is all designed and pitched to go to this. So all runoff will remain on site.
Most of that area is paved now.
It's almost entirely paved.
The other comment I wanted to make, I appreciate you putting a locus that we could find. I'm very critical of some of your competitors who you can't figure out where the project is based on a locus.
Thank you.
Should I tell them why? If you want to know why,
Little things please you.
when I was a freshman in engineering class, I had to do a drawing. In the old days, you had Leroy and everything. And I spent days building this drawing. And I presented it to the instructor, and he looked at me and took it wasn't a felt tip, it was a crayon. He put a big X through it because I forgot the north arrow. And I never to this day forget the north arrow. So it had an impact.
Charlotte?
Just a quick question and a comment. It strikes me as a beautiful project and certainly is an enhancement to the neighborhood, and in my opinion, it's wonderful that you've taken it on. There's a comment I think you might have addressed, but not completely. The final one from Scott Schuler about the landscape requirements and the screening for parked cars. I didn't quite pick up what the frontage would look like there on the landscaping plan, the site plan.
Well, the existing condition is non-conforming to the zoning bylaw as far as the landscape requirements. So in our response to that, we pointed out the two non-conformities. The one is the landscape requirements of the bylaw, and the second one is the parking lot setback in the rear of the site. Both of them are existing conditions that are non-conforming. So what we have done is we have proposed landscape that doesn't alter the site distance for traffic, which is always a concern. You don't want to have a lot of landscaping in the front that's going to inhibit people being able to see when they're at the site driveways. But it's a better condition than what currently exists. So when we go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, we would take the position at the zoning board as far as the special permit goes that the existing condition is being improved, although the zoning bylaw may not be met to the letter of the law because we're improving an existing condition. It's not substantially more detrimental and therefore can be improved by special permit. If you have any suggestions on that landscaping, we'd be happy to hear from you on them.
John, you have a comment?
I just would like to say a couple things that is obviously a well-thought-out project, and it looks like it's going to be very nice, but I want to remind Ms. Moynihan that we are the planning board and not the historical board, and the economics of this development isn't really part of our criteria. But thank you for giving us your dissertation.
I understand that. I just think that this is the first time the project has really been presented publicly, and obviously there are a lot of people in the community that have interest in it, so it's just worthwhile information, but I certainly appreciate that. It's not an economic issue for you. Important, though, to the town.
Thank you.
Pam, do you have any?
No, I had an opportunity to go up to the planning department, and Charlotte and I spent quite some time looking over the plans, and I mean, I think it's a beautifully laid out plan. And I mean, the other building, the Nimrod building, is in terrible condition. It's sad. I mean, I've already lived here for 2 years, but walked around that building a couple of times and thought how wonderful it would be if it were to be renovated one day, but this really meets many more needs, I think, than the original restaurant. So I was very pleased with it. I have one question. Any of these units, would they fall under an affordable housing unit?
No, they would not. They would be, the target rental would be workforce type housing, market housing for single people or couples. That would be the target rental, and seems to be where the need is, or one of the needs in the community for the housing.
Okay, thanks.
Bob, did you have any additional?
No, I didn't.
Okay. I just want to make a statement because it was indicated that there is some concern about maybe insufficient parking, but with 7 apartments there, you're not going to be having the parking at the same time that the businesses are operating, so I don't really see that as being a problem. So it's just a statement I wanted to make. Now, I'd like to ask the public if they have any comments or questions, but before I recognize anybody, I want you to understand that this is simply a site plan review and a design review. We are not going to entertain anything that should come and will come before the Historical Commission, because that is not within our purview tonight. Yeah, the ZBA or the Historical Commission.
Yeah, it's just.
We are only doing site plan review and design review. So with that in mind, I'd be happy to recognize anybody who has any questions. Yes, ma'am, and please come up to the podium and state your name.
Good evening. My name is Susan Bergman. I'm the Executive Director of the Falmouth Arts Center, which is located right next door. And we are thrilled to anticipate that that lot is going to be improved and beautiful and will certainly make us more visible, and we appreciate that. I do have a small concern about parking, and part of it has to do with if the people who are renting the apartments are able to have 2 cars. Is that a concern? Are there 2 parking lots for each apartment available, or will they only be able to have just 1 car? And if there are 2 cars, that's going to fill that parking lot. I'm not sure, we haven't been told how many actual spaces there are in the parking lot that would be available for both the residents and people using the commercial spaces.
Mike, would you handle that, please?
So under the Falmouth zoning bylaw table of parking requirements for the residential, there are 4 2-bedroom units, and the bylaw requires 2 spaces per unit with 2 bedrooms or more. It could be 4 bedrooms, you're still required to have 2. You could have more if you could fit them. And uniquely, the 1-bedroom units require 1.5 spaces. So I don't think it's 1.5 cars like the insurance commercial, but you need, if you do the math, it works out. We have 3 1-bedrooms, which is really 4.5 cars, but you always round up. I don't know why that is. Whenever you're before a board, you're never going to round down. You always have to round up. So there will be parking that's adequate for the residential uses, because there'll be 2 spaces for all of the units. And it was an important note about the mixed use that you made, and that is the residents are typically out during the day and the offices are there during the day and vice versa. So we're pretty confident that we have adequate parking.
Pam, did you have?
Are there going to be designated parking places for the units?
There was no plan to do that.
I mean, because a lot of people today work from home. So were you to have even 2 2-bedroom units where at least one, if there are 2 people living there that's working from home, I mean, I don't think you can just make the assumption that everyone will clear out at 9 o'clock in the morning and not return till 5.
No, absolutely, we agree with that. We can consider that, but we hadn't really considered the signage, and it becomes an issue of enforcement, and sometimes it self-enforces it over time. But we can consider that. But as of right now, there's no designated residential parking.
Put out your lawn chair like they do in Southie.
Right.
I think one kind of important factor is that there are 5 units proposed for the front building and 3 commercial spaces. So you have this parking area that's set there, which with the mixed uses and the different peak times, it would make sense that the tenants would be parking there, where there should be plenty of parking in that area. The other building, there are 2 residential units. Mr. Dalton has a similar type of development at Catawba Gardens, up off Route 28A, where he has the mix of the apartments and the commercial space. He's indicated there's never an issue with parking. There's always ample parking. I mean, I know you have to look at the details of this, but these mixed-use projects can work with the different peak times, essentially.
Anyone else from the public? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Bob Kinchler. I'm with Dillingham Place. I have a few questions to ask. The question you have asked these people, the square footage on there's 5 apartments in the Nimrod building, one on the first floor, which is 1,038 square feet. There's one on the second floor, 1,000 square feet, and 3 apartments, one at 626, one at 679, and one at 799. There are 3 tenant spaces on the first floor. And the tenant spaces are 972 feet, 1,206 feet, 858 feet. Those are large tenant spaces. We don't know what is going into any of those tenant spaces. Nothing is programmed at all in the tenant spaces in either building. There is no sewage shown, no bathrooms in those buildings. The 4 apartments on the second floor are not handicap accessible. The first one on the first floor will be handicap accessible. I think that gives you an idea of in the barn building, there are 3 tenant spaces. I'm sorry, there's 4 tenant spaces, one 1,620 square feet, no, 1,620 square feet, 2 of them at 1,620 square feet, one at 1,664, one at 1,632. The apartments are both 1,177 square feet on the second floor, not handicap accessible. The 4 apartments in the Nimrod building have 1 staircase going down. That way, if the fire department, and that's up to them, if they build these 4 spaces on the side of the building here, I believe it would be difficult for the ladder truck to get on that one-way street to hit those 4 apartments, to give it a second access space. I have a list of questions that I would like to give you. If you want to interrupt at any time, I'll be glad to try to answer those questions.
Mr. Kitchler, you're asking the board or you're asking the applicant these questions?
Either one.
So,
I'll read it to the board, and then if he wants to answer them, then fine.
Brian, would it be better to have him ask all the questions at once and then have...
I know sometimes it's difficult to differentiate between what you do and the Board of Appeals does.
Mm-hmm.
If it's the use of the building,
We can't...
that will be the Board of Appeals time to ask those questions. If it's how this building is designed and what it looks like, those are the types of questions you should be asking this board.
Remember, we only are looking at the design review and the site plan review.
Are these units to be rented or sold?
That's not up to us.
Well,
Site plan review is the landscaping, the access, the
Okay.
lighting.
landscaping, lighting. Right on the bottom, there are 4 street lights in this building. One at the entrance of the first exit down here, and one at the exit of it. Another one is where the bicycle rack is on the right-hand side, and one at the dumpsters. Now, if there is all the entrances to the apartments are on the rear of the building. There are no light fixtures in the rear of the building for privacy purpose, for
Safety?
safety and items such as that. So that, and the parking in the back is not, like I say, designated to individual apartments. And it could be used for employees on the property, for the tenants' spaces. The storage in the back shows 4 attachments and there's 5 apartments. I believe there should be a storage for each individual apartment. It's a one-way street going in this way here, so truck traffic would be going in the one-way area all the ways up to deliver to the individual apartments or whatever is in the rear of the building. The dumpster, I believe the the truck collecting the dumpster would have to go in the one-way area to pick up the dumpsters on the rear, on the right, to hit them on a forward position. And then go out the second exit. Now the second exit is going to be two-way. If trucks went in there to deliver, they'd have to turn around to come back out because they couldn't go down the exit, the other one-way street. So that creates a problem, I believe. The tenant spaces, I think we would have to know what's going in the tenant spaces in order to see if the storage is correctly or if the parking is sufficient for those spaces. Another item would be, is there going to be anyone in charge on the property during the day?
That's not us.
I can't ask, okay, but.
Lighting is fine, traffic circulation is fine.
Okay. There is no catch basin for the surge on this area over here, coming down here on the pavement. There's a leaching pit over here, but I can't see where it was, catch basin was on the paved area. And as you can see over here, there's a catch basin over here, and it goes to a leaching pit. There's no problem. Up here where the light fixture is going to be, they have a tree planted right next to the light fixture, which in the future might dim the light. As far as, I really believe that in order to get the right amount of parking, we have to know what is going in these tenant spaces. I would imagine that even a small coffee shop would be allowed because it would be grandfathered. There was a restaurant there before. There's a chimney showing on the, 2 chimneys showing on the roof. But they're showing on the bottom floors of the buildings. But how do they get to the second floor? There's no design of where those chimneys are going from the first floor to the chimney.
That again would be the interior design.
Pardon?
That would be the interior design of the building.
Well,
So.
then on site plan review, if this were the rebuilding the Nimrod Club and the restaurant, I think it would be an excellent idea, something similar to it. I think that is probably less parking space you have less parking space than is needed for what is shown on the plan. Other than that, I can't go into the building areas that
May I summarize your concerns for what we're looking at? and see if I've gathered your concerns for what we can look at.
Okay,
Okay, one is the circulation within the parking.
right.
In particular, truck ingress and egress. Okay. The other is insufficient lighting, principally internally on the property, but also you have concern at the corners where the drives are. Is that correct?
There's not enough lighting on the driveways around. I can't talk about the interior lighting or anything like that, according to your directions.
No, what you were saying is that where the apartments are in the parking, you're not seeing lighting back in there.
There's no lighting there.
And so that your concern is for safety
That-
of where the parking is so that people using the buildings at night can safely
Right.
navigate
I'm
within.
also concerned about, and it's not sight, but concerned about getting down from the second floor with one stairway.
Yeah, and that's kind of, yeah, I understand that,
That's a
it's a
building
safety factor, but that's
And
the
there's
building
another
commissioner.
thing, safety requirement would be, people in those apartments would, unless the door was wide open, the entrance door wide open, they would have to have some way of beeping them in with pressing a button so they could, the door would unlock for UPS or
Right, I understand that, but again, that's not in our purview.
and
But now you're concerned about the catch basins too. You don't see catch
Right.
basins over with the second driveway.
I don't see anything on the second driveway.
Yep. the
I
second
see a
drive.
leaching pit, but I don't see a catch basin.
Right. I understand that. Okay. And you question whether there is sufficient parking, if there's any usage other than, say, office space in the
Well, for
seven
example,
apartments.
if it were a doctor that went in there, you'd need a receptionist, a nurse, and a doctor. That's 3 more people, 3 more parking spaces.
They are following our bylaws in how much parking. They do have the calculations here. So they are following the bylaws of the town in calculating the parking. So that I would have to tell you. How it plays out all the time, I don't know. But the calculations, if you do look at the plans, the calculations are there.
And also, they show no amount of toilets or whatever they're going to have in those buildings. That's out of it too?
Yeah, that we can't deal with.
Okay, then.
But I thank you for your questions and your comments, Mr. Kinchler. Those that apply to us, we will take into account.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, is there anybody else from the public who? Yes, Ann. Remember, this is not, you can't make historical comments.
I know.
Okay. And is this new that you wish, is there something new that you're going to comment on? Or
Yes, I don't exactly know what you include in design review. But, and I'll try not to use the word history. I don't know if I can. This part of the building here, this little square at the northwest corner, is the little house that was on Main Street.
Little house that, when the Nimrod flood was there.
And it was hit by the cannonball. And it's dated to about 1740. And I noticed the plans show double windows on the first floor and the second floor in that little house, which would not have been incorporated in a house like that at the time. And I think Mr. Dalton's efforts to make the house make the Nimrod look like the Nimrod are really commendable, trying not to use the word history. And it seems like that should follow, if this is under your jurisdiction, this design review, that the oldest house would have windows that look like they do now, I think, single windows instead of double windows.
Is that it, does that come under design review?
No.
Sorry. Okay.
No, design review, we look at a form that it's whatever, 6/6, 12/12, whatever it is. We can look at that, but we can't say double or single pane.
No, I mean there are two windows together
No, we don't do that.
and two windows together. It's,
So mullioned windows.
Yeah.
okay, all right. Perhaps that's my main comment. Other than Leslie McDonald has written a letter and she asked me to say that she is concerned, and this is a typical concern for old buildings, that the windows that are replacements look as much as possible, and I know it's hard to do and costly to do, as the windows, the good windows, as the good windows look today. You know, when you put in double panes, thermal panes, you get reflections that are different.
But then there's an economic reality too of things. So, yeah, so you have to strike a balance there. So I would think that, Pam,
Is this in a historic district?
it's not. It's just that it's a historic building.
Also, it's, Mr. Dalton mentioned wood siding. Does that mean shingle?
Yes. And I routinely spend too much on windows to make them look historic.
Okay, I think he is, I was a member of the Save the Nimrod group, and I think he has lived up to his informal commitment to try to save the exterior, all in, except that one little, the oldest part of the building. And I'd ask about the cannonball hole. Is there going to be anything on the exterior that you might see reminding us of...
You mean a hatch that you could open up and see the cannonball?
We'll just shoot another cannonball through.
Well, you know, if you go down Battle Road in Concord, you see little things where the bullets went through, or cannonballs. And this is our reminder that Falmouth was bombarded in the War of 1812.
Nothing to do with it.
Thank you, Ann.
Historic district.
Yes, ma'am.
I have just a question.
Well, yeah, you have to, otherwise they can't hear you out in TV land.
Yes, just a question.
I'm Alice Batchelor, and my husband and I live in Dillingham Place. And I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
I just want to know how close Dillingham Place is to this and what this is.
Mike?
I didn't see what she was...
The road.
The road.
The road.
Oh,
Okay.
well, I live over here somewhere. What's this?
Alex?
It's a road that my pen is going straight up. You haven't, that's the driveways that you've talked about, but this is behind your red building.
Tennis Club Lane.
I'll explain.
Thank you.
That is the road layout of what is known as Tennis Club Lane, which is, I believe, the driveway to the Dillingham Place. The building, the new building's proposed to meet the Falmouth zoning setback. It's meet or exceed. It's 25 and a half feet back from the property line, which would equate to about 35 feet back from the paved edge of the driveway, leading to the tennis club place?
Tennis Club Lane.
Tennis club lane, yeah, leading to the facility.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has any questions? Malcolm?
Malcolm Donald, Ambleside Drive. Yeah, it's really nice to see Warren Dalton here and with his preliminary plans, and it's really refreshing to have a contractor or a builder keep his word to the group of Save the Nimrod, and it's very much appreciated. My question is, there are a number of mature trees that are currently on the property, and it seems to me, I'm not exactly sure where they are, but it seems to me they're up in the northwest corner, and I'm just wondering what the disposition of those are.
Beautiful trees.
Who can answer that question? Mike, is that a you question? Okay.
Madam Chairman, we're very much aware of, there's a grove of trees in this corner, and in particular, there's a beech tree here. And we've done everything we can to avoid paving in that area. So the site has been designed to make every effort to preserve it. There's no proposed pavement there. These two spaces are two of the ones that we don't want to build. We're just demonstrating, if forced to do that, we'd have to cut the tree. But there are others along the back edge, some more significant than others, some not on our land, and we're doing everything we can to preserve the significant ones. So there's a couple not so significant ones that will probably have to go in here. But this back corner, specifically the beech tree, and then some other larger ones that are over in this green area, we're making every effort to stay away from.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Yes.
I'm Ann Louise, and I live at 110 Dillingham Place, and I just have a question, and I don't know if it's appropriate, but...
We'll find out.
The new building, which will be like a barn, is not pleasing to me. I may be the only one in the room, but I would rather, and I know the plans are drawn, and I would not, I would not be vociferous about that, but I would much rather see it toned down instead of being red. I would love to see it just be neutral and sort of match the rest of the Nimrod.
That is a nice comment. We just have a tradition in this town of not being able to tell people the design that they have to use or the paint color they have to use. So. But thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else, please? Okay. Anybody from the planning board has anything else? Comments or questions?
Yeah, I just have a
Yep.
comment. The roadway on the west is shown on the drawings 12 feet. The fire department requested 14. Is that going to be 14 feet?
Yes.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chairman,
Yes.
the plans have been revised and submitted today. These plans reflect the 14. We thought there may be other revisions, so we submitted them today, so they're in your file. Can I follow up on one question about site lighting? The site lighting and the concern for site lighting, it's important to note that there's actually building lighting too. If you look a little, it's hard to see. There's a legend on the plan. And there's a symbol for a building light, like, mounted to the building. It's soffit lighting. So, soffit lighting, it's down direct, but it's designed to provide the lighting needed to provide security. And the lighting on the site is lantern lighting, not your typical gooseneck parking lot Walmart style lighting. It's all sort of trying to be in keeping and consistent with the surrounding area. So that was laid out and is adequate for the site without creating a lot of light. So I think we've addressed that. And then there was one other comment about delivery trucks. The uses here are such that the largest truck ever anticipated here would be the trash truck. So the concept with the trash pickup is to drive straight in. These are the dumpsters that will be fenced in and made as, what's the word, invisible or?
Inconspicuous?
There you go. As possible, but you still need to gain access, so they'll be surrounded by a fence. The trucks today are designed, they have a very tight turning radius. They get in a lot of places, and they usually, the trash pickup would be in early morning hours, off hours, so residents parking will be there. None of the offices are likely to be open. And the concept is to drive in, load, turn in, make a 3-point turn, and exit. Can be done standard. The town engineer had no issues with it. He did ask us to just rotate these slightly because they were more directed at an angle, and that, I agree with him, was a little difficult. So I think the largest truck, the trash truck, can make the maneuvers that he needs to make to do that. The other truck that's typical that would be here is a delivery truck, UPS, FedEx, or a small WB Mason delivery or something. I don't know. So this is all designed inadequate for that type of truck. The fire department had no issues with access. So I think we addressed that.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, then we will take this under advisement.
And we'll see you at your next meeting for a decision.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming and participating.
We gotta go back to the other guy.
His concerns.
Thank you, and the Historical Commission.
Sorry, we can't deal with that.
I saw them all here, I thought, oh my God.
Okay, we're going to continue our meeting here, folks. We have an ongoing meeting. We'd like to keep going. Please leave the room or be quiet, okay? This is a planning board discussion. Applicant Joseph Pacino, special permit for contractor's yard located at lots 3A, 4, and 5, Hike and Way, Cape and Islands Engineering. So we've already had a public hearing and been through this. We've had a site plan, and this is a planning board discussion.
And Mr. Chairman, in your package, you should have your special permit criteria. There's a specific criteria to the contractor's yard. And then there are the general criteria, section 216, that apply to all special permits. So the board may want to go through those as talking points. Some are fact-based, and some obviously require the board's discussion and discretion. But you'll see. We revised them to, like you had previously, to remove any opinions of the planning staff.
We need to review them. Have you all had time, everyone had time to look at them? I mean, some of us have done this, a couple of these before, so we're somewhat more familiar than others. Pam, have you had time to review the conditions that we're operating under?
I did, because I read my emails.
Well, the most important thing, I'll just touch on it, this is because it's zoning, it only requires 3 acres, not 5 acres, and that's why they've assembled the property to get to be 3 acres to conform with that. The setbacks we've talked about on-site, we reviewed them all there. They're actually shown in the circle. They've actually moved some things, the uses around to accommodate it. We will talk about hours of operation, and they've applied for a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Anything else? Any other discussions? Any concerns?
I have a concern.
You're up.
My concern deals with the adverse impact on a neighborhood predominantly residential in character. I've been back after our site visit together to see if I got a wrong impression or not. And it's my impression as I drive down from Sandwich Road to Old Meeting House Road and along to the site, I see that on the first side of the Andrews Farm that you reach before you get to the site that we're talking about, there's a new residential development going in there. Have you seen that?
Yes.
Yeah. And that along that side of the road, there is housing. And that housing sort of ends. There's then a space, clear space, and you get to the site that we're talking about, and there's the Mr. Andrews Brothers house on the corner, the road we're talking about, and then not directly opposite, as was represented at one point, but slightly opposite, there's a road going into a residential neighborhood, and you go past the Rod and Gun Club, and then there are more houses. So that's an area in transition.
Well, what
And
I
it looks to
recall-
me, I hadn't quite finished,
Sorry.
is that it is residential. I'm wondering about predominantly as a word, but it certainly appears to be residential and going more strongly in that direction. And I'm concerned that it would have an adverse impact on it.
Well, historically, we had a problem in town that we were driving all our contractors out of town. So we created a bylaw to create contractors' yards, and we said not in residentially zoned areas, only in agricultural zoned areas. And we have two different sizes, depending whether it's agricultural A or agricultural B. But this bylaw was created to preserve jobs and working in Falmouth. And this area is not residentially zoned. It's agriculturally zoned, and it's specifically the size and the setback match the bylaw. Just because people plan to build a residential, they'd have to rezone it and make it a residential zoning to have it be a residential area.
I appreciate what you're saying, very much so, and would certainly, defer to you on that. But it's also true, although you created that bylaw, that this language is here among the things that the planning board must find on. And as I went back to think about it, I think it's pretty residential.
Bob?
I could look at it that residential development is an adverse effect on the agricultural development in the area, because a lot of that development is fairly new. And I drive through there just about daily, because I go to Green Pond from Hatchville, and I drive that road all the time, have been for over 30 years. And I look at what was there and what's there now. Most of the residential development had been on the east side of the road. It's just recently that there has been some other residential developments going in on the same side as Tony Andrews Farm. And I've wrestled with this whole question about is this going to have an adverse impact? And I look at what could have gone in if the town didn't buy the Andrews Farm. And the presentation that Mr. Andrews gave to us, that the most directly affected abutter is a family member. And the fact that they, at great financial loss in a lot of ways, have decided to sell the farm to the town and preserve that. So across the street from most of the residences is a preservation of a large tract of land in Falmouth. And I don't really see where a small parcel that is going to be used for what is allowed in an agricultural district is really going to have a huge impact. I think vehicles traveling down the road from all the residential development that could have gone on there would have a far more greater impact on it. So just in my own neighborhood, I have contractors, I have landscapers, and we haven't, they're right up abutting one lot after half-acre lots. And we haven't really found that to be any real major issue. We're talking about a small contractor that's going to be moving a couple trucks in in and out on a daily basis. And the road can handle it. I haul boats down that road all the time. I just don't really see where it's going to have a huge impact and that it's going to really affect any further development of any residents, because he's sandwiched between the Andrews Farm and a shooting range, a skeet shooting range.
Well, there's another lot there also, but I realize that reasonable people can disagree on this. But to me, there's an enormous difference between 11 big trucks driving back and forth and sedans and little cars driving back and forth. I don't see them in the same way.
The bylaw is specific in that it points out April 1st, 2000, that we have to deal with houses that were built before that day. And people that built after that day built in a neighborhood that these things can happen in. And that's why it particularly has the date and time for houses. If you had a house that was built next to this next year, or this, say, just last month, it wouldn't have the 300-foot protection. It had to, in order to get the protection of the bylaw, it has a specific date in it. And that is why I remember where we really have had, when we created, an awful lot of contractors came in and pleaded with us to find a way to keep to their jobs in town, and this bylaw was crafted to do that. And it's specific about the setbacks in time, and houses before 2000 have the standing and ones after 2000 do not.
Jim, what was your concern then in including this phrase? If that was your whole intent, how did it happen then that you included the adverse impact on a neighborhood predominantly residential in character? It seems out of keeping with your stated intention.
It says, well, first of all, I think it is, I see it, I'm very familiar with residentially zoned properties, and if this was zoned residential, there'd be 100 houses all over the place, and it isn't zoned residential. It's zoned agricultural for a reason. Because that's we were asked to preserve the agricultural uses in our town, so we rezoned very large areas agricultural and stopped them from being big residential developments and made the lot sizes bigger. And then we gave the protection of any houses that were there. If they were there before the change was made, they had protection. The ones after do not. So, I mean, that's another side of the coin, yes.
I totally understand and agree with everything you've said. And it's unfortunate, and I had the very same experience even in light industrial where there could have been residential properties built, and there were. If people spent the time to look and see in their greater environment of, within a mile of where they were going to live, what was allowed in that area, I think people might not choose to live there. Because if I had known, if I had bought a property and then I found out there was going to be whatever is going to be there, I probably wouldn't have bought a house there. I would have looked elsewhere. And I don't know, there's no way to remedy that now because this is an allowed use and people have chosen to live in areas where the zoning is agricultural. And if anyone went to town hall and looked at the planning and said, what could be built here? What could exist here? I probably wouldn't have bought a home there. But people don't do that. They see a home, they love it, they love the environment. But I absolutely agree with you. But a question that I have is, are there school buses that go down that road? Because the one restriction we could make is that business not start and trucks not be entering and exiting where there are school children waiting on that road to be picked up. That would be my only concern, is what time are kids picked up? And I'd like to move the hour so it's not during the time of the bus route.
That could be anywhere 6:30 to 9.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Kids in
Well,
the system.
And if you like, we're going to have a little bit more comment. If you'd like a motion for that as a condition, we'll talk about it. Yes, Brian?
This is just for my guidance. I'll write you a motion. And I'll
Okay.
find out if there's a school bus route. This is just for your discussion tonight.
Okay,
and your
so-
and your deliberations.
Okay.
That would be great, I
Right, this
appreciate
is
that.
just so we can write you a motion.
My only concern with that is I get up at early in the morning, I start work at 5:30, 6 o'clock. You got to get things done. If you can't make them wait till 9:30 to start the work, especially in the wintertime. It's dark at 4, you kill half the time. So it would take away the ability of them to do their job.
I don't know when the school buses run here, but I know for high school, most kids are picked up by 7,
Yeah.
maybe 7:30. But I would assume this is not in a gigantic operation, so that you might be able to accommodate school buses. That's all. I don't know, maybe there wouldn't be any truck runs early in the morning.
You have the offloading too, Pam.
I'm sorry?
You have the offloading of school children too.
I think we heard testimony that these trucks aren't all used at one time.
Yeah.
That they're parked here, and they take one truck and come back, and then they take another truck. They don't have all vehicles all pouring out at 7 in the morning and all pouring back in. I don't think he has that many employees, or I don't even think it's practical.
Jim, you know what? You're right, for right now. But what happens 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road? I guess we could come back and, you know.
It's agriculturally zoned, and this is what we want in the agricultural zone.
And I don't have a problem with that. I just want to make sure.
Sure, we don't
that
want to create
don't
danger.
have a hazard with.
Well, if he
he
wants
cha-
to increase the number of vehicles that he's storing on
He's
the
gotta come
property.
He has to come back.
Okay.
So, and just to address some of Charlotte's concerns, we do have a lot of conflicting things within our bylaws. One of the ones that really rubs me the wrong way is the fact you can put housing in industrial A land. And that's why we have no industrial property left, because it was all developed for housing. So
8 units per acre ate up every bit of our
Yeah.
industrial land.
Yeah.
It was a mistake. We had to create light industrial C and put no housing in it in order to save places for jobs.
Yeah, and there's always going to be conflicts within different zones, so.
Yep.
This is a question for Brian. If we allow the special permit for a contractor's yard for Mr. Bucciano, and 5 years later, he bugs out of it, does that permit go with this particular piece of land forever, or does another operator have to come back and see us again for that use?
The board's within its rights to restrict it to the current owner,
Okay,
and then if it vacates, it goes away.
okay. Because I would feel more comfortable with that.
Yes, John?
Yeah, if we do something like that, I would prefer that we don't restrict it. I would prefer that we say that what we approve can go to somebody else in a future date, but if they want to increase the usage, they have to come back and see us. You have to get financing to buy things, you have to, and if you put that kind of a restriction on there, if he goes to sell it, what's his value? If he gets ill, if he wants to retire at some point in his future, I think the use should be protected, but if there's any increase in use or change in use of the contractor yard, if it gets approved, that applicant would have, that new owner would have to come back to see the board.
And we have a list of vehicles and their weights and sizes that are part of the permit. Is that not correct, Brian?
I think you have a list of vehicles, I'm not sure of weights or sizes.
No.
No?
No, it's just a list of vehicles.
Just a list of vehicles. Well, we have a description of them.
Jim?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I understand what your concerns are about semi-residential area, but this is a industrial area, and all we're being asked to do is approve the storage of trucks on that piece of property. There's no process involved, that comes later by someone else, but the only thing we're asked to do is, can he store this equipment on that property? And I think that's part of what the bylaw allows. So I'm not sure we have a lot of choice here.
Oh, did you say it's an industrial area? I don't think it is.
It's agriculture.
Agriculture, I'm sorry.
And I think the fact that it's not directly on the road points in its favor. It's way back on the property. So starting up with vehicles and things like that, I don't think is an issue.
How dense is the screening going to be here? In other words, arborvitae?
This
Or
is the
what?
existing screening.
Yeah.
It's the existing
It's already
screening?
there.
Okay.
Remember, we were standing right there, it's all heavily wooded.
Yeah, oh, I know it is, but it's also deciduous.
Correct.
So what I'm thinking is that Mr. Bucciano is in the landscaping business. And if possible, if he puts arborvitae along here, that might alleviate some of the concerns too, because they grow densely and they absorb sound. They will absorb lighting back in here too, from anybody, who might be concerned about that. So perhaps arborvitae along.
Along where?
Yeah, you can't see from back there. Just right along here.
It's going to be a nursery of evergreens, all rows of evergreens.
Yeah.
This is really thick vegetation right now. To put evergreens in there.
You couldn't even do it, you're saying? Okay.
To cut down something
It's
else.
going to be all rows of evergreens.
Thank
right
you.
here.
We didn't know this, so
No,
thank
no,
you.
I remember this as being 10 trees deep.
Yeah.
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 Oh, it's
10
thick.
10 trees
Yeah.
deep, so
It's
even,
thick.
even when the leaves are off them, it's,
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
it'll
why,
buffer the
I think
sound.
it's adequate, yeah.
Yeah.
Jim, can I just,
Go ahead.
are you, are you proposing that there will be greenhouses?
Doesn't matter, it's not part of our purview.
I'm just reading from here. It says greenhouses proposed, employees involved in these questions. Will greenhouses require water? I mean, what's the purpose for this sheet?
Yeah. Purpose of the sheet, these are your special permit criteria for the board to discuss. If in fact, as you may recall, back at your definitive plan, the easement for the water line stays. It might be that the board is concerned with retaining that water there if there are other uses on the site. It's up for your discussion purposes, that's why it's there.
So one of my concerns would be the use of pesticides, herbicides, or any other sides.
Would you have the same concern on the farmland?
Yes,
Okay.
but I don't have any input into that right now. I mean, that's a big issue now. What's being used,
Moving on.
and, are they more organic?
Again, the board gets to look at the storage of the vehicles and the supplies, how it's stored, where it's stored. You don't really have the purview of what's there in terms of it being organic or not organic. But you do have the right to say your trucks can be here, your contractor's equipment and supplies can be here. But if it's associated with a use allowed as a matter of right.
A matter of right, agricultural, it's not our...
We've asked the applicant to remove that from the plans. And those are, all you're going to be looking at is what he'll be storing in his contractors area. Some contractors, landscaping contractors, do store pallets of fertilizer, there's pallets of pesticides. And this board has in the past, required that it be on a paved surface with the catchments and whatnot, such as what's been suggested.
And no work will be done on the vehicles here? No changing of oil or?
Right, you have that part of your special permit criteria. No major repairs, you can't drop a transmission. In the past, the board has allowed minor things like an oil change. We do that.
You do it at your home.
Comparison purposes, I do my own oil on my driveway. But the board has in the past allowed minor repairs. It's up to the board on this application, but in the past you have allowed.
Okay. So part of our permit should be then that because it's landscaping, I'll try to raise my voice so you can hear. Oh, you can, okay. Because it is landscaping, that any kinds of fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides must be kept in a weatherproof storage shed to keep it out of the elements,
You could, yeah.
which is only sensible, but who knows?
Just so it doesn't leach into the ground.
Right.
Just inadvertently,
You can condition your approval of that, in that manner. Right now, you have a list of vehicles, you have a list of equipment. And whatever that list of supplies is, you can condition. If there are no supplies, then, well, he gets the vehicles and equipment home.
But we haven't been asked, we haven't been offered that, Brian, nor have we asked the question.
So we're on the list, that's what's in front of you. I don't have that list in front of me. You can condition. You can add things to it. You have a list of vehicles, I forget what they were, some skid steers and whatnot. And whatever is on that list of supplies, you can, whatever that is, you can condition. It doesn't have the right to bring in pallet loads of whatever it might be and store them in these areas without your permission.
We don't have a list of supplies.
But you can work off the list that you have, and I'll write those conditions, right now you want it somehow, protected from the elements. You don't want them going to the groundwater. So if it's, I don't know this in front of me, but when I get to your motion, I'll get that.
And we'll have a chance to vote on those conditions.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You've heard what's been suggested, and we can go through them one at a time when we
Right,
go
you're
through
talking
the
about
vote, see if
increases
we
of
have
uses,
support for all-
ownership
we
of
all
school
approve a
buses.
majority approval.
Right.
That's how it works.
Oh, this is sort of your initial discussion.
Right.
And then once the rubber hits the road, when I'll put a motion on the
Put the
floor.
motion down, the motion will have conditions that we, if necessary, we can go either to accept them all or one at a time.
There you go.
can I, one other?
Yes.
That were there to be oil changes, that it not be done on the ground, that it be done on a concrete slab of some sort where there's drainage to capture the oil so it doesn't go into the grass?
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay.
John, you all set? I'm looking down the end. I want
I'm
to
all
get eye
set, sorry,
contact.
yes. I'm all set.
Okay, so I think,
There was concern by the engineer, I believe, or was it the water department? I don't recall which. That because there are employees here, and there would probably be water here, and there would probably have to be a restroom facility here. Nowhere on this plan is there anything to do with a septic system or water supply coming in.
a conditioned approval might be, to introduce that type of a facility would require a revisitation by this board and approval by the Board of Health.
Okay.
So I have school buses, hours, oil changes, increase of use, come back and see you. There was a comment about limiting it to the current owner, but that doesn't seem to be the board's concern at the moment. So we'll put the motion together for you. And the way the motion works, Charles, so you know, is that board finds that has a minimum lot size, the board finds that's not within a water resource district, the board finds that there are no adverse impacts. And then 5 of 7 must vote. No adverse impact. That's how that works.
Right. If I can ask Brian a question. Did we get the engineering referrals for this in our email? Okay, I need to.
Gee, I hope so.
Okay.
It was a packet that came, not this time, but the
Oh, the
prior
last time, okay,
Yeah.
okay, I just need to go back through that. Okay.
If you ever need anything, just give us a shout, and Melinda will take good care of you.
Did you include hours in that, in the list that you gave? There was a concern about hours.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, right now it's proposed 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. And that's what we'll write as a motion, and the board can discuss.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
And we'll see this on the 12th. All right, your next meeting.
Next week,
I don't see the purple folder.
No purple folder.
That's general correspondence, so we don't have any.
Nobody wants to write to us.
And the next meeting is 9/12/17.
The meeting on the 5th, it's the Labor Day weekend, and the way where things work, the quorums and such.
Couldn't happen.
Not a good idea. So I'll be your next meeting.
No, we're not meeting on the 5th.
So that completes the agenda item.
One more item for your consideration, Mr. Chairman. When you gavel the meeting closed, I want you to notice the gavel.
Oh, geez.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm sorry.
Whoa.
I had it in my head and didn't even notice.
I've been waiting all meeting.
Oh, my gosh.
It's a beauty, huh?
Yeah.
Well, it's not an antique now.
I'm embarrassed that I didn't notice.
Gosnell never used that.
You got me on that one.
I'm sorry.
So
I had
should
to do that.
Should I move adjournment?
Are you going to talk about agenda items? Were you going to collect future agenda items?
It's not on our,
It is.
Where?
General correspondence. Don't we have a time when we say what
Yes,
we want on the future agenda?
Yes, what would you, we can talk about, no, we can't.
Not on your agenda.
it's not on the
our
agenda.
time. We'll make sure the next agenda, the future agenda items is listed. It got neglected from this one, it should be
Just
there.
got cut off.
I think it got cut off.
I shall talk with Brian about putting yours on the next agenda. then.
Correct.
Okay?
Okay.
Motion in a second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.